Yo, welcome to Alpha Omega University. Welcome back. I know I've been away for about 3 weeks now. Yeah, we took a break. Because of that, we'll get into that in a second. Let me just make sure everything's running fine. I will not be able to have the videos that we usually have full screen. I'm having an issue with like the Twitch side of things, right? So I tried to fix it before the stream. And I couldn't figure it out, but it's all right. Let me make sure everything else is working fine, though. The video is going to be like kind of cutting out in and out every once in a while when I click away from it. But outside of that, it should be fine. I'm checking everything. Everything looked good. Let me know on the chat if everything looks good on your guys' end. Because we've been away for 3 weeks, man, and shit gets updated. Things happen, right? So I want to make sure. Yo, Dennis, what's up, man? What's up? You're showing up again, man. You're loyal to the learning in Albion, man. You're loyal. I love it. Listen, welcome back, right? Welcome back. I was away for about 3 weeks. Now, granted, about a week of that was already planned in the schedule, right? I already knew I was gonna have some days off and stuff in May. In May. And so I already knew some days were going to be off, right? So the schedule was already like that. But there were some days that I kind of got sick. And then there were some days that I just decided to just take off because I started planning a different way of doing things because I got a lot of feedback from a lot of different people, right? And I also got a lot of things that are going on with like me. Like I have school, right? And it's because, like, if you guys don't know, I go to university right now, right? And so I'm coming into my last year before I get my degree. But anyway, so I thought this summer I was gonna have a little extra time, and actually turns out that this summer is gonna be fucking hard. So because of that, I have less time to be able to commit to this, to the stream and stuff. And I know that a lot of people have been kind of struggling to keep up with the episodes because I was basically doing 2 episodes plus a VOD review 3 times a week, right? And so I know that all of those episodes are like an hour and a half each. So if you think about it, that's like 4.5 hours of content every single week. And some of you guys just didn't have that much time to be able to catch up with all that, okay? And I get it. But at the same time, when we started the stream, I wanted to make sure I hit the ground running. So we have a lot of content out, and now it's in the YouTube video, in the YouTube channel. So if you guys have missed any of those episodes before, you can just jump in the YouTube channel, check it out, and then you're gonna be good there. I have not updated the schedule for. Actually, I'm a hop on the schedule real quick to talk to you guys about that, because that's one of the things that we changed, right? So the schedule looks very different. That's because instead of doing 3 times a week, we're now doing 1 time a week. All right. But what I am gonna do is, instead of canceling episodes whenever like I get sick or whenever I have something like going on that I can't come to that episode, what I'm gonna do from now on, instead of just canceling the episode, I'm gonna just make the episode on a different day. Usually I'm gonna try to make it the next day after that. So if like the 16th is the next one, right? And that's next Friday. So if I'm not there for that, if that one gets canceled for whatever reason, it's most likely that I'm going to end up doing it the 17th. All right. But either way, I'm going to try to keep updating the schedule as much as possible. The schedule's right there right now on the screen. You can see it. But on Twitch, if you scroll down, the schedule's going to be there as well on the About section. Right now, I haven't updated that part yet. It still shows the old schedule, so that's my bad. But I'll update it as soon as we're done with the stream. Give me about an hour after the stream, and I'll update that as well. It won't be a big issue. Let me go back to this. By the way, as always, the videos you guys are gonna be watching right now and throughout the whole stream are gonna be ZvZ fights from the last few days. I did include a couple fights from about a week ago or so. There's like 2 fights I think that you guys are gonna watch. They're gonna be like 7 or 8 days ago. And that's just because, well, right now we're in the off season, right? And as the season started winding down, and now into the off season, a lot of fights just don't happen, right? So a lot of the content tends to kind of die down, and with the content dying down, there's less videos, there's less VODs of us to kind of enjoy and look at the ZvZ that's going on. And that's both servers, that's East and West servers, not just one or the other, right? So yeah, so I try to find as many of the last 3 days ZvZs that I could find, but honestly, there's not a lot, right? There's really not. So I always encourage you guys, if you guys ZvZ at any point in time, it doesn't matter if it's like a huge ZvZ or a small scale ZvZ, even like 20v20, 30v30, like that shit's super cool and you can learn a lot from it, right? So upload your videos, man, especially if you guys can upload it with comms. It helps people out to learn the game and also to kind of, you know, showcase your guild as well, right? Like we see a lot of the guilds like being showcased on these videos and stuff, and you know, like right there we're watching I think it's Snow versus Siam in the East server. This fight is pretty good. I think I saw it on AOTV when it was about a week ago. It was a pretty massive fight. But anyway, that's all beside the point. I've been away for 3 weeks. We're back. I don't want to take too much time with announcements and stuff. Essentially, the schedule is the biggest announcement, right? When it comes to the schedule, there's just one extra change that I added 2 more episodes that you guys hadn't seen in the previous one because now the schedule actually goes farther out, and the entire right hand column of the schedule is completely empty, right? It's just says episodes whatever. That's because I haven't written those episodes, right? So I haven't actually got there, right? So either way, I mean, we have months to get there, so don't worry. I'll fill them in as I write the episodes. So they will be coming up little by little over time. So we'll just have a continuous schedule going on. And I think that's a better system anyway. All right. So today, we're going to be doing episode 25. This episode is called Ego Check. All right. Now, Ego Check is a very, very, very important episode because everybody needs to check their own ego at some point in time. And it's funny that I actually am doing this episode. I did not make it this way. I did not make this happen this way. I didn't schedule it this way. All right. But a couple days ago, I actually, because I know that you guys know I have a character in a guild called Team United. I have a character in Militant, and I had a character in CIR in PoE, right? So I moved my main character from PoE into Reject Party. All right, so that's where I'm in right now. In Reject Party, I just joined them like 2 days ago. If anybody's wondering, like, oh, why'd you leave? Everybody always thinks that something wrong happened whenever somebody leaves a guild, and it's like, the truth is that the war over there with PoE and all that, I joined them when they were getting kind of hit bad, right? Like Triple X was literally in Sunken Bow Spring, like the home zone, right? So that's when I joined the war and I started fighting in it, whatever. But now the war's kind of like cooled down, right? There's not fights that often, things like that. So because of that, I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna move on to a guild that kind of provides a little more content, right? So that's all it is. But there's no issues. Reject Party is where I'm at now, and it's been great so far. The guys have been very welcoming. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. There was another thing I wanted to talk about with that. No, I can't. Oh yeah. So the ego check, right? So the reason I was saying is interesting about the ego check episode today, because I just joined Reject Party, and well, a lot of the people, if anything, probably the majority of the people in Reject Party don't know me, right? I haven't played with a lot of the people that play in Reject Party. So they don't know me, right? I'm not like this super popular, like familiar figure, right? Like I'm not like, the older players tend to know me more, but especially like if the players that have played in the last 2 years or so, they don't really know me. So the thing about it is, those guys in Reject Party, some of them are like, you know, telling me like, hey, you know, you should do this, you should do that. Like I posted my video of the ZvZ that we had a couple days ago, or was it yesterday maybe, and they were like giving me feedback on the things that like on mistakes like I made or things that I could improve on, right? And so that's awesome, right? Like that's amazing, right? But it's all about the mentality, because a lot of times when you tell somebody like, hey, you made this mistake, you should do this better, whatever, right? A lot of times people think like, oh my god, like what the hell are you going to tell me about my gameplay? Like I'm way better than you, right? And it's like, that's so wrong. Like you cannot have that mindset if you ever want to progress at anything. That's not just at this game, it's at anything, right? You have to be able to kind of give yourself an ego check and realize that you can learn a lot from everybody around you, right? And if you allow everybody to criticize your play and criticize your style, right, then it's gonna force you to defend your style. And if you cannot defend your style, meaning that you cannot like argue that your style is better than the style that they're telling you, right? Then that means that you need to kind of look at your style and be like, maybe your style is not that good, right? It's not about like, oh, who's gonna win the argument or whatever. That shit don't matter, right? That shit don't matter. It's about, ultimately, it's about what's gonna be better for the Zerg and what's gonna make you a better player, right? And that's all it is. And so if you know, if other people argue with you and tell you like, oh no, like you should play, you know, fucking Siege Bow instead of fucking Demon Fang, right? And it's like, okay, well, listen to them, right? Don't just be like, no, you're crazy, that's not right, and that's it. Like, just listen and see and argue back and forth. See maybe they're right, maybe you're wrong, or maybe you are right, and now you just teach them why they are wrong about it, right? But it doesn't have to be like an issue or anything like that. And that's exactly why we got to have this episode, because if you don't check your own ego, what'll happen every single time is that you're gonna think that you're so great that nobody will ever be able to teach you. And if nobody can ever teach you, then guess what? You're never gonna get better. It's just that simple, right? So today we're gonna be looking at why you win. And then after that, we're gonna look at why you lose, right? In ZvZs, as ZvZs as a whole, right? Like why you win ZvZs, why you lose ZvZs as a whole, right? We're also gonna be defining what great play is. Like when somebody says like, oh, that's a great player, or when somebody says like, oh, this guy did a great play, right? Like that was a huge play, like good job with that, right? That kind of stuff. Okay, that's great, that's awesome. But what is it, right? How can you define that? Okay, and a lot of times people think, okay, well, if it's something that's like that looks cool, or it's like a highlight reel of some sort, right? Like there's a lot of kills happening, then that must be a great play. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a great play. It just means that, you know, you got a lot of kills, and that's great, but it doesn't mean it was a great play, right? So defining a great play is going to be very important. Towards the end of the episode, we're going to be talking about patience. When you're ZvZing, having patience and waiting for the enemy, all right? And then how to strike after you've applied patience, right? There's times to strike and there's times to apply patience, right? I believe like historically the Chinese used to call it like the crouching tiger and the, God, I can't remember the other animal. But basically one of them was like waiting patiently for the right moment to attack, and then the other one was actually like leaping forward into the enemy to actually attack, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about, the patience and striking. And then at the very end, we're going to actually apply an ego check on the enemy, right? Instead of just looking at an ego check for ourselves, we're going to also apply an ego check on the enemy, all right? And I'll explain more about what that means later on. But essentially, that's going to be the schedule for today, right? If you are new and this is the first time you've ever kind of watched the episodes or whatever, the episodes usually last about an hour to 2 hours. We don't go over 2 hours, and if we've never had an episode but under an hour, but if we do, I mean, it's okay. I think some people welcome the shorter. Oh, there is one more announcement I do got to make before we get like really into this episode. One of the things I'm going to do, and I'm planning on doing it, however, I haven't started it yet because it's going to take a lot. All right. It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of learning for me to do. All right. However, I do plan on making some kind of, I know YouTube calls them like YouTube shorts, right? But I'm not going to do shorts because I know shorts are like a few seconds to like a minute, something like that. I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to do like 5, maybe 10-minute episodes, right? And they're not going to be like episodes, but they're going to be kind of little quick videos to kind of just explain some very fundamental things, okay? Sometimes we might even review certain fights and just kind of do like a quick review, 5-10 minute review of fights, right? So the reason I want to do that is because I know a lot of times people don't have a lot of time to sit here and listen to an hour and a half of a full-blown episode, right? But you guys still want to do the learning, so I'm going to try to implement like a 5 to 10 minute video system. The only thing about that video system is that it's not going to be coming out regularly, right? Like like what we're doing today is the actual stream, and the stream is going to happen every Friday 00 UTC, right? It's going to happen. But the videos because I don't know how to do them, and I don't know, because I want to actually like make like infographics and stuff like that, right? Like I want to actually like look at data, look at numbers, damage numbers, you know, resistance numbers, the percentages, that kind of stuff, right? I want to look at raw numbers and data, and I want to make the videos actually interesting and fun for you guys. So I don't know how long it's gonna take me to like learn how to do those things. And I don't know how long it's gonna take me to actually start pumping them out. Once I do learn how to do them, I don't know how long it'll take, like of my time to be able to apply them. So I'm gonna try to release as many as I can over time, but it's just something that it's in the works, right? It's in the works, so just know about it. All right, so we're gonna get into this now. The first thing that I told you guys about we're gonna look at is why you win. Right, so when we're doing an ego check, we got to check ourselves, and we got to make sure that we are checking to see that. Here, give me a second. 1, 2, 3. All right, we're good. All right. See, I told you I've been away for 3 weeks, man. I'm a little rusty. It's all right. We're good. So we're gonna look at ego checking ourselves to make sure that we understand, that we humble ourselves. Okay, and that we're able to continue learning by being humble. All right, but by humbling ourselves, how can we actually do that, right? How can we actually be like, okay, let me ego check myself, let me make sure that I understand my value, right? Because I'm not saying that you're not valuable, right? You're obviously valuable. Every single member in the ZvZ is very, very valuable. Okay, there's a reason that when I call a ZvZ, I don't like a single death that didn't need to happen, right? Like if one of my players died for whatever reason and it could have been avoided, I don't like that, right? Because every individual player brings extremely a good amount of value to the ZvZ, okay? And that's the way it is. However, we need to check ourselves. So we need to understand, why do we win? Like what are the things that make us win in a ZvZ? So the first thing that we can look at is, well, this is the most obvious one, I think, is when people say, oh, well, it was a great individual play. All right, well, what does that mean? Well, all right, so great individual play is when one individual, one person did an amazing play that completely won you the fight. All right, so think of an individual like King Just, right? Coming in with a fucking guillotine clap and just clapping the fuck out of their back line and killing 10 people in the back, and then the enemy just fucking routed after that, right? Or here comes a siege bow bomb squad. I mean, I know it's a bomb squad, so it's not really individual, but whatever. It's a 3 siege bow bomb squad with a beamer and you know, whatever, right? And they come in and they fucking just destroy the fucking backline of the enemy, and then you guys win the fight. All right, that's great individual play. Okay, that's not the ZvZ, that's not the Zerg, right? That's the individual play. It's the individual bomb squad, the individual bomber, the individual person, or maybe the enemy was about to counter engage on you and completely fucking decimate you, and a support had an incredible locust, right? Like one of the locusts just put a fucking perfect locust that saved everybody. You were able to turn the fight after that, right? That's great individual play. So then when we say about, okay, how important is great individual play? Well, obviously it's important, but we have to quantify it, right? We have to put a number to it. How many times do you win a ZvZ because of great individual play, right? I'm not talking about little individual plays. I'm talking about those big fucking moments, right? How many times do you win a ZvZ because of a great individual play? Well, the truth is that the most you're going to be looking at 1% of fights, right? You're not going to be looking at much more than that. Like the reason is because great individual plays have a lot of factors to them. Now, I'm not saying that players don't do great individual play every fight. No, I mean, there are some players, especially the best players in the game, they do great individual plays every single game, every single ZvZ. That's great. That's why they're a great player. However, just because they're doing great individual play, that does not directly result in a victory for your side, right? I'm talking about those times that those great individual plays result in direct victories. And that is no more than about 1% of the time. And you might say, no, because me with my enigmatic, I save everybody. And so that's why. It's like, yeah, that's great. That's great individual play, but it doesn't directly lead to a win. Just because you have an amazing enigmatic does not mean that you suddenly can also kill the enemy. You're an enigmatic, you shield, you don't kill enemies, right? So those kinds of things will apply to great individual play. So that's only about 1% okay, if you want to go crazy, say 2% of fights are reliant upon great individual play. Now, one of the things I do want you guys to understand is that I'm talking about great individual play when I'm talking about 1 or 2 or 3 at most people, right? 3 if you're talking about like a bomb squad. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like you have fucking 20 top of the line players in your Zerg and every single one of them is playing to their best fucking shit today, right? Like they're just fucking perfect today, right? Then that's not great individual play. That's the entire Zerg. Like 20 people out of the Zerg, like that's a big fucking group, right? That's not great individual play. That's great Zerg play. All right. So when we look at great Zerg play, that's the second one, right? The second reason why you win. So the second reason why you win is great Zerg play. That means that your Zerg as a whole was playing very well. They had good synchronization. The clumps were coming in really well, right? The Hand of Justice was bringing extra people clumped up into the air compress of the one-handed mace, right? The timing of the heavy mace purge was perfect. The location of that Duskweaver armor was great. It purged the enemy's boots as they were coming in, right? All of those things put together, I mean, they're all great plays done by individuals. But when there's so many of those plays done by individuals, it becomes great Zerg play, right? The entire Zerg is playing well together. They're synchronizing together. They're making sure that their skills overlap in a good way. You don't go and see 10 Judicator armors on top of each other. You see Judicator armors being spread out across the entire Zerg, right? Things like that, right? That's great Zerg play. Now, how much percentage of all the fights that you win, right? So let's say you win a 50-50%, right? Like let's say you win 50% of all fights, and you lose 50% of all fights, right? You have an even ratio, all right? Well, about 40 to 50% of the fights that you win, so meaning about a fourth of all total fights that you take, are won because of great Zerg play, all right? And that's great. I mean, if you think about it, like if your Zerg plays great, and it doesn't matter about the caller, nothing like that. It's just your Zerg just played great. You are almost assuring that you're gonna win the fight, right? Because that's a 40-50% chance that you're gonna win, right? So that great Zerg play is very, very, very important. Now, this is the one thing that kind of leads us to the next, right? It's the callers, right? How much do the callers actually have influence over whether you win or whether you lose, right? And a lot of people always kind of have their opinion on this, and a lot of people tend to think that callers are responsible for the majority of wins. They think that because a good caller gets to call Zerg, then that Zerg is just going to do well. That is not true. That is absolutely not true, all right? When you look at a great caller, say the best caller in the fucking game, right? You take that caller and you drop him in to a average Zerg, right? I'm not even saying a shit Zerg. I'm just saying an average Zerg, all right? You drop him into an average Zerg. Then what's going to happen is that the caller, having a great caller, is going to be responsible for about 20 to 30% of your victories, right? So if you look at that, that's actually only like 15%, right? 10 to 15% of all the fights that you win are because of, or actually of all fights, 10 to 15% is because of the caller, all right? Now, when you add them up, because obviously, right, there's a lot of Zergs that have great Zergs, they're great Zergs, and they have a great caller, okay? Well, those combinations will end up to be about 50 to 60%, maybe even 70% of all the fights that you win, right? So the fights that you win, about 70% of them are probably due because your caller played well, your caller called well, and your Zerg played well, right? And you can say, oh, well, hold on, this math don't work because we're still missing about 30, maybe even 40%, right? So what about that 30 or 40% of the fights that you win, right? Where does that come in from, right? And that comes in from the enemy mistakes, right? The mistakes that the enemy makes accounts for that other 30 to 40%. So if you think about it, enemy mistakes account for more than you having a great caller in your Zerg when it comes to your victories. So understanding why you win is really a simple answer. You win because the enemy fucked up. Right? It's very simple. The enemy made mistakes. And now, where does the great Zerg play and the great individual play and the great caller play come in? Well, it comes in the response to the enemy's mistakes. If the enemy makes no mistakes the entire fight, I don't care how good your caller is. I don't care how good your Zerg is. If the enemy makes 0 mistakes, you will not win. It is a 0% chance you will win. I'm not saying you will lose, but I'm saying you will not win. Why? Because if neither side, let's say your side and the enemy side, both do not make mistakes, then what's gonna happen inevitably is that neither of you will be able to get any kills on each other. All right? This is why you see the highest level Zergs, when they fight against each other, at the very beginning of the fights, very few people die every single engagement. All right, think about the fights this season between Pora and Escalation, right? If you actually look at those ZvZ fights, you're gonna notice that for the first 1, 2, sometimes even 3 engagements, either nobody or maybe 1 or 2 people died on each side. And as the fight went on, well, it started snowballing and more people died every single engage after that. If you don't believe me, go look at those videos. I promise, they're out there, I promise. Right? And this is not just this season, by the way. This has nothing to do with the meta. It has nothing to do with the meta. It has nothing to do with the current callers or the current Zergs or the current playstyle, right? This is the way it's always been. Look back, season 13, Blue Army versus Elevate. You see the exact same thing happening. In fact, back then, it was such high level play back then that I remember being in those fights and there was not a single kill on either side after about 10 minutes of back and forth fighting. And there was not a single kill on either side, right? You can even look at it on 20v20s, right? I think tomorrow they're going to be doing the 5v5 Crystal Championship thing, right? On AOTV. If you guys like that shit, go ahead and look it up. Yeah, it's tomorrow at some point. I don't know. But anyway, that stuff's fun to watch every once in a while. So, but I'm talking about the 20v20, right? So the 20v20s, when you look at the highest level competitions for 20v20s in Crystals, what you see is that very, very rarely do people end up dying. And when one person dies, it's like a fucking snowball after that and everybody starts dying, right? That's because that's when the fractures start happening. That person died because of a mistake. Not because the enemy did great, but because that player made a mistake. And that same lesson can be translated across the entirety of all ZvZs. You do not win because you made great plays. You do not win because your caller is amazing. You did not win because your Zerg is playing really well. You win because the enemy made mistakes. And the sooner you understand that and the sooner you accept that, the better you're gonna get, because you're gonna understand that you are not going to single-handedly completely carry the entire fight. Now, I will say one thing. There are individual great plays that happen that will lead you to victories the smaller scale you go, all right? So if we're talking like a 30v30, and there's one guy that just plays fucking amazing compared to everybody else, then yes, that one guy can carry the Zerg. Yes, of course. It's happened, right? Now, give me a second here. Hold on. All right, I'm back. So, maybe step back up. All right, so that one person is able to carry, right? One person can carry. It's just that it's a lot harder for somebody to carry the more players you add to the ZvZ. Okay? And so if you're in a ZvZ that's any bigger than 50v50, then in reality, the chances of you carrying your Zerg is slim to none. Slim to none. Okay, I've only seen it a handful of times, and I'm talking about the entire time I've played the game, which is literally the entire time the game's been live, right? It's only happened a very handful of times where in a big fight, say 80v80, one single guy carried the fucking fight. Very, 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 very incredibly unlikely. All right, the statistics just don't make sense. All right, so essentially, the reason you win, you need to understand that it's because of the enemy's mistakes. Now, just because the enemy makes mistakes does not mean you're gonna win. Don't twist my words. You gotta listen to what I'm saying, right? If the enemy makes mistakes and you have a great caller and you have great Zerg play and great individual play, then and only then will you win. Why? Because when the enemy makes a mistake, if your Zerg does not capitalize on that mistake, then guess what? That mistake did not happen. So then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the enemy makes 100 mistakes if you never actually catch them because of it, right? If they ran into your Zerg mounted and you didn't full engage on them, and then they ran away and they dismounted far away and now you have an actual fight, then guess what? Their mistake didn't even happen. It doesn't matter because you didn't take on the opportunity. They gave you the opportunity, you didn't take it. And that's where great individual play, great callers, and great Zerg play come in. But those three things do not matter at all until the enemy makes a mistake. All right? Now, let's bring it back a little bit. All right? And let's actually define what is great play. Because it's very, again, like I said earlier, right? It's very easy to be like, oh, well, it's a highlight reel. It's things that look cool. It's when you kill a bunch of people, right? Well, okay, those may be great plays. I mean, at least they look cool. At least they look like great plays, but it doesn't mean they're great plays. So what is a great play? So you can get huge kills, sure, maybe. But how did you get those kills? See, that is more important. Well, you can say, oh, well, I hit E. Okay, well, you're being too passive with your analysis, right? You need to look at the ZvZ more critically and understand what allowed you to hit your E the way you did, right? First of all, there was a clump, right? Otherwise, you would probably didn't get a kill because if you're not hitting a clump, you're probably not going to get any kills. So there was a clump. Okay, well, where did that clump come from, right? Did your Zerg cause that clump? And if it was your one-handed mace, who's a great one-handed mace air compressed player, but everybody was using night helmets, so how did he get those? How did he get that clump? Well, maybe it's because your life curse dropped a really great fucking purge, or your heavy mace jumped in and dropped purges, right? That kind of thing. All those things matter before you come in and hit your E. But we have all these DPS players taking all the credit and say, oh yeah, I'm just great. That's why. It's because I'm amazing. I got all these kills because I'm great. It's like, no, you're not. Ego check, right? That's the whole point of this episode. Ego check. No, you're not great because without that life curse, without that one-handed mace, without that hand of justice, without that tank stopping the enemy tank that was going to disrupt you, without all those things, guess what? You wouldn't have hit the clump, right? You wouldn't have hit the clump. And even if you did hit the clump, then guess what? You probably were not going to kill anybody. Without the damnation piercing it, without the carving piercing it, the spirit hunter, whatever you use for pierce nowadays, right? You weren't going to get it. You weren't going to hit anything. You weren't going to kill anything, right? So great individual play is awesome, but it's meaningless without the support of the rest of the Zerg. So huge kills, is that a great play? Not really. Not really. That is great play from the Zerg. But that is not great individual play, right? That means that every single clump that we see die is not the result of one player just doing great. It's the result of the entire Zerg. And that's every clump, by the way, right? So another thing is, what is another part of a great play is positioning, right? It's like, oh, well, you know, I saw an angle and I took this angle and I went up to this ridge and I hit the enemy from the flank by myself with my longbow and explosive arrows, and I fucking killed a bunch of them in the back line. Great. Okay, all right, that's good. Hey, that's great individual play. Good job. But I want you to think, how were you able to position yourself as you did? How were you able to walk up there to that ridge without the enemy being able to see you, or at the very minimum, without the enemy being able to counter you or drop defensives fast enough to stop your hit from killing people, right? How is it that you were able to hit that positioning so well that it got you this great play? Well, it's probably because the enemy was focused on your front line. Maybe your front line players were putting a lot of pressure. Maybe you had one halberd that sprinted into their back line for some reason and was just doing a bunch of fucking bleeds, annoying the fuck out of everybody in there, and it distracted the enemy just enough time for you to come around their flank and drop that E on top of the enemy, right? But you never see these things on a video, and you would think I'm crazy. You'll be like, no, that's not it. Oh, 100% it is. Because you did not get that kill because you're great. You got that kill because the enemy made a mistake. See, the enemy's mistake was focusing too much on that halberd that went to their back line, right? That was the enemy's mistake, and you capitalized on it. So that's great. Good job for you. You capitalized on an enemy mistake. That is what leads to victories. But without the enemy mistake in the first place, you would not have been able to get that hit in the back at all. In fact, you probably would have been countered and died. Maybe even demon armored and killed yourself on the process, right? In the game. Gotta say that, right? But that's the point, right? So you need to understand, okay, you had great, huge kills, you had positioning, that's great. All right, but you need to be able to understand how you accomplish that great play. All right? Now, the thing about it is that you're having a proper counter strategy, right? How can you attain a counter strategy? So if the enemy hits you with something, and I don't mean like actually like engages on you or whatever, right? I'm talking about they do something, right? Like let's say the enemy is directly to your west and you're to the east. Your Zerg is on the east, the enemy's on the west, all right? And then they suddenly walk southeast. Well, that means that they're gonna take your south angle from you, right? Obviously. So what are you gonna do? Well, what you want to do is wait, did I say that right? The enemy on the west, you're on the east, and they're walking southeast. All right, yeah, whatever. You guys get the point. So what you want to do, they're going to take your south angle from you. So what you need to do is you need to be able to have a proper counter strategy, right? What they're doing is not a mistake, right? They're doing a good play, right? I mean, taking your south angle, that's pretty good, right? That's not a bad strategy. I'll take south angle whenever I can. That's awesome, right? However, the problem is going to happen when you understand the proper counter strategy to that, right? So let's say you position your tanks, your disengaged tanks, to hit the northwest side of the enemy, right? While your entire Zerg engages directly southwest into the enemy that is trying to cut you off. What that's going to do is going to split the enemy Zerg while they're in motion, okay? And you're probably going to get kills. If not, at the very minimum, you're going to stop them from taking your south angle, right? Now, the problem with that is, well, you might get counter engaged, right? So you better make sure that it works out. And if it doesn't, then you get counter engaged, right? But think about it, that counter engage is the counter strategy to your strategy, right? So if you think about it, every single move that we make in the game actually has a counter strategy to it. And you need to understand that every single thing you do will put a risk to you and your Zerg. All right? Now, you got to kind of weigh the risk and reward. There are sometimes that the risk is too much, for the reward is too low. Or sometimes the reward is very high and the risk is very low. I'll give you an example. A low risk, high reward scenario is when you're holding a castle and it has the gate up and you bomb the gate when you're inside the castle and you bomb the gate while the enemy's trying to hammer it. That is high reward, low risk. Low risk, why? Because the enemy can't actually get to you, right? Like, even if they counter engage, they have to be super quick. And even then, it's like, it's really hard for them to actually catch you because there's all these walls and the gates, right? So you can hide behind that, and that's low risk. Great. But it's high reward because you can get kills for free, and pretty easy, to be honest, right? So it's high reward, low risk, right? So those kinds of things are important to understand, because every single thing that you do as a Zerg, but also individually, is a risk reward system. So when we're talking about great individual play, you don't realize how much risk you're taking in making that great individual play. When you see these people with their highlight reels popping up, yo, Lolly, what's up, bro? I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. Good seeing you, man. So when you see the enemy, like, or sorry, when you see a highlight reel, right? When you see like a highlight reel of somebody, and they post all these great fucking clips, and you're like, oh my god, this guy's amazing. They're so great, right? And then you look at it and you actually start looking at videos of them fighting on a daily basis. Like, you actually see the entire fight. You don't just see their highlight reel, right? You don't just see the 10-second clip, the 15-second clip. You don't just see that. You see the entire fight. You're gonna see how often these motherfuckers put themselves at high risk, right? These people that go in with guillotine claps and all this shit, how many times they clap and they fucking get demon armored, right? Or yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good, Lolly. I'm good. I appreciate you, man. So since we got Lolly in the chat, like, Lolly's one of them, man. He just dropped a couple videos recently. Go on his YouTube, give him some love, man. But yeah, so Lolly's one of them, man. He'll post some sick ass videos, right? This man will post some sick videos, some sick highlight reels, and they're great. But I'm sure that he can tell us 100 times that he gets fucking wrecked so many times trying to fucking get a good clap in every once in a while, right? Because he'll get demon armored, or he'll get fucking caught in a clump as he's backing up, or he got purged. His fucking Hellion jacket got purged, and now he's fucked inside the enemy's back line and shit, right? And Lolly's a fucking great player, but that's what happens, right? That's what happens. And so what I'm talking about is understanding why you win is a big portion of understanding that you on your own cannot carry the whole team. And the moment you understand that, you're gonna realize that taking all these gigantic risks is not gonna be worth it over time. Because even if you get a big clap in, even if you get a great hit on the enemy, if you took such a risk that you end up dying, or you end up whatever, right? Or you end up, your healer has to overextend to heal you and keep you alive, and then your healer died because of it, and you might say, oh, but I lived, so that's okay. It was okay that I did that because I lived. But it's not okay because you just traded a healer, right? You just got your healer killed, so it's not okay, right? These are the kinds of things that people need to think about when it comes to great play, right? And again, when you go in for those high risk plays, what's gonna happen is, remember, 100% of the fights that you win them because the enemy made mistakes, right? But what if you're the enemy and you go and take a high risk play against me, and then I punish you for it? Then guess what? You may have just ensured that your Zerg will lose because I am capitalizing on your high risk scenario, right? I'm taking advantage of the fact that you have too much ego and you think you can carry the entire team yourself, right? And that's the point, right? So having great play is very important, but you need to understand that 100% it all comes down to the enemy mistakes, and your great play is determined by what the enemy's mistakes are giving you. Because if your Zerg and your Caller and everybody individually is playing perfect, guess what? No one will die. No one will die. And I'm serious. I've been in fights like that, man, that last 45 minutes, an hour. I've had fights like that. And you can say, oh, well, they lasted that long because there was a lot of people. Not always. Not always. I've had fights that take 45 minutes with an 80v80. Why? Because both Zergs are so evenly matched, and neither of them are making any mistakes, or they're making very few mistakes, right? Very, very important. So now that we've looked at great play and we've looked at why you win, right? Now we understand why we win, okay? We've looked at our ego and we're like, okay, all right. We don't win because of my own individual great play. We win because the team is working together well. All right. And because the enemy's making mistakes and we're punishing them for it. All right. That's great. That's great. Now, let's look at the opposite side of this. Let's look at the other side of the window, right? Let's look at why we lose, okay? Because now we got to understand. We understand why we win. Now we got to understand why we lose so that we can get the full picture, all right? We're kind of on our way to ego checking ourselves, but we're not quite there yet. Now we need to understand why we lose. And that one is the one that really hurts, right? Because now, remember, we win because the enemy made mistakes. So obviously we lose when we make mistakes, right? It's pretty straightforward. You just flip the coin upside down. Here's the problem. It's very hard to look at our own mistakes because of the ego that people have. It's also very hard because if you make a mistake, the mistake may simply be that you do not know, that you do not understand. You might think you did the right thing, but you actually did the completely wrong thing. You might have engaged Northeast and you think that that was the right thing to do, but you should have engaged Northwest. And if nobody's there to tell you and teach you, hey, you should have engaged Northeast, then guess what? You're never going to know why you lost. And you know what you're going to do? And I promise you, I promise you, you guys have heard this from callers before. You guys have heard this from guild leaders before. They'll go and say, well, you know what? The enemy just played well, right? Or, you know what? They got lucky, right? Or they had something on us, right? They had more people. They had more numbers, right? You'll hear these kinds of things all the time. And it's not true. It's not true. Right? I've won fights. I've won fights that are so unwinnable. That seemed so unwinnable until we won them. Right? Long time ago, we went into a zone with 20 people before there was cluster queue. So you couldn't zone in no matter what. You had to actually literally kill people inside the map in order to get more of your people in, right? It was like one slot for one slot. There was no queue. I remember we went in with a 20-man party because that's all we could fit into the zone. And with 20 people, we started fighting 250 people. Right? And every time that we got a kill with those people, with those 20 people, every time we got a kill, we backed off. Right? We regrouped, whatever. But every time we got a kill, one of our guys, one of our Zerg from outside the zone was able to come in. All right? And over time, we ended up getting so many people, they couldn't wipe our 20-man group. We were able to kill enough people where we actually got a full-blown Zerg and we actually finished them off. And if you think that's crazy, this was season 4. No, season 5. This was season 5. Blue Army versus Oops. Right? This was on a map called Hill of the Hollow Earth. Right? If you've been around a long time, you'll know what I'm talking about. That seems impossible. 20v250. It seems impossible, but it happened. Right? And it happened. Why? Because Oops made many mistakes that day. Many mistakes, and we did not make mistakes. So what I'm saying is, right, why you lose is because you make mistakes. So what kind of mistakes are we looking at? Well, there's individual mistakes. So if you think that you can accomplish more or you can accomplish better than the Zerg could, right? If you can carry the Zerg, if you believe that, right? Then that individual mentality is a mistake. Why? Because you're playing on your own while the rest of the Zerg is playing together. Instead of having 50 people on my Zerg, I have 49 because one of my people thinks that they can do whatever they want. Right? Because they have such an ego that they think they know better than the caller. And because they think they know better than the caller, they think, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm not going to follow calls. I'm just going to engage where I want to engage, when I want to engage. I'm going to drop my E where the fuck I want, right? Because you think you're better than the caller. So instead of having 50 people in the Zerg, and I have 49. But guess what? That individual mentality, it's like a poison. It's like a disease. It goes, it spreads amongst the others. And so somebody else is going to see you not following the calls. And they're going to say, well, if you're not following calls, why should I? And next thing I know, I have 48 people instead of 50. And then the other people are going to see those too, and they're going to do the same. Next thing I know, I have 40 people. I have 30 people. By the end, I'm going to have 10 people that are actually following my calls and 40 people that are doing whatever the fuck they want. All because every single one of those 40 think they can do whatever they want. They think they know better than the caller. They think they can achieve more than the Zerg can achieve. Right? That's an ego issue. Right? And the ego issue is a reason why you lose. This is exactly why we're going over an ego check today. All right? Now, another issue that also happens, and this causes a lot of problems. There's like a 3 different issues. These are deficits, right? These are lacks, like you're lacking something, right? These are lack of awareness, right? So that's like you're not looking at the whole fight. You're kind of just tunnel visioning. You're just looking at what's in front. You're not paying attention to, the flanks. Like right here in this fight that we're watching right now in this video, there's a choke in front of them, right? And those guys, there's a choke in front of them. The enemy's on that choke, right? So I bet you the most of those people are just looking at that choke, and that's it. But I'm sure they can get flanked from the west or from the south, right? So if they just stay looking at that choke and they don't pay attention to the off-screen name tags to the southwest and southeast, then they might get flanked and killed, right? I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I'm just saying it could happen, right? And if they tunnel vision, meaning they have lack of awareness, then it is very likely to happen, right? Now, there's another issue, lack of experience, all right? Lack of experience is things like, I don't know what certain enemy actions mean, right? Well, the enemy engaged with 20 people. I don't know what that means. I don't know what I should do about this. Should I full counter on them? Should I back up? Should I, try to run them down? Right? I don't know what that means. Well, that means you lack experience, right? If the enemy engages you with one party and the rest of their Zerg stays back, then guess what? That's probably a bait, right? That's probably a bait. We actually have the bait and switch episode next week, right? So, but that's probably a bait. So you probably should just wait until they try to pull their full engage, and then try to counter that. But if you counter on that bait, then guess what? You're very likely to die. That's lack of experience. And this is exactly what this stream is meant to do, is to give you a little more experience and a little bit more knowledge, right? Which is the next part. Is lack of knowledge, right? Lack of knowledge. So lack of experience is not understanding what the enemy actions mean, right? What are they actually doing? They engaged me. I don't know if it was a one party engage or a full party engage, or a full Zerg engage. I don't know. I just know they engaged me, right? Lack of knowledge is actually when you don't know what you should do, right? So I just talked a little bit about that. It's like, what should I do, right? Should I full counter them? Should I not, right? That's the lack of knowledge, right? So lack of knowledge leads to mistakes. Lack of experience also leads to mistakes. So you need to have both, right? And lack of awareness is also another big one mistake, because it leaves you open to enemy engages from the flanks and things like that, all right? Now, there's other issues on why you lose. It could be things like your composition might just not be the right one for that fight, right? Like you went full melee DPS to a castle fight, right? That's not ideal, okay? I'm not saying you're gonna lose, but I'm saying that you're not helping yourself out. You're starting with a disadvantage because in castles you're gonna need ranged DPS to shoot over the walls, right? You're better off with ranged DPS in a castle. So you might just have a composition mismatch. That is a possibility, right? Another possibility is that you may be lacking specific roles in your composition. Maybe you went out with 2 healers per party. Maybe you went out without a locust, right? Maybe you don't have enough enigmatics. Those kinds of things. You came out to a ZvZ without any pierces, right? Composition deficits is another thing why you might lose. All right. And by the way, all of these are kind of like Zerg related issues, right? This is the entire Zerg. Because the individual one is when you think you're so good and you start doing whatever the fuck you want, right? But everything else I'm talking about, lack of awareness, lack of experience, lack of knowledge, composition mismatch, composition deficits, right? All those are basically Zerg issues. And you on your own as an individual player, you cannot fix these issues. This is an issue that you have to fix with the whole Zerg. Again, you cannot carry your Zerg. Just because your Zerg has a composition mismatch, it doesn't matter. You might be the only siege bow in your entire Zerg of melee DPS in a castle, and you'll be like, "Oh, well, I'm wearing the right thing. Congratulations." You're not gonna be able to carry the Zerg. It's just not gonna happen, right? That's the point. Now, another issue of why you might lose is simply wrong calls, and this is a very simple one, right? It's very just the caller made a mistake. The caller chose to do high risk, low reward calls, and he got fucked, right? This tends to happen sometimes too, and that a lot of times is because of the caller not having enough experience or possibly not enough knowledge, right? So it all goes back to the same thing. But other issues, real quick, are lack of speed, right? You might not be thinking or acting quickly, right? Sometimes the ZvZ moves very quick and you're too slow to respond. You know, you see an enemy kind of coming around the east side and you don't immediately relay it to your caller, right? Lack of speed is a big one. Another one is doubts, like the caller says, you know, push through the choke, right? And you don't instantly push through the choke. You're just like, I don't know if I can live through that. No, I'm gonna stay back. Okay, I'm gonna walk through now, right? That doubt in your head, that right there is gonna make you slow, right? And being slow is gonna get you killed, right? And another one, which also goes back to that same thing, is lack of timing, right? If you overstay, like let's say you engage the enemy and then you take too long to come back out of the enemy, that's gonna get you killed. That's a mistake, right? You're not gonna die because you were inside the enemy. You're gonna die because you overstayed. The mistake was not being inside the enemy. The mistake was overstaying inside the enemy, right? But things like engaging too early or engaging too late, those things might also get you killed, especially if you engage too late and the enemy counter engages, right? You're gonna get caught in the counter engage. And again, you didn't die because you followed the call. You died because you did too slow. You were too slow, right? And again, you died because the enemy caught you when you made a mistake. Your mistake was that you were too slow. So you see, all of these tie back to the same thing. It's mistakes, right? You win when you capitalize on the enemy's mistakes, and you lose when the enemy capitalizes on your mistakes. So how do you avoid losing? Well, make as few mistakes as possible. How do you ensure you win? Capitalize on every mistake the enemy makes, right? But in order to do those things, you need to understand, right? Experience, awareness, and knowledge, right? You need to be able to understand what the mistake is. Just because you see a mistake doesn't mean you actually recognize it. It doesn't mean you actually know that you just saw a mistake, right? This is one of the biggest things that differentiates the best callers from all the other callers, right? The best callers are able to look at the enemy's mistakes and be able to counter effectively on them when they see those mistakes, right? A bad caller sees the mistake, but they don't understand it. So they're not able to capitalize on it. All right. So the next part is going to be patience, right? We're getting down towards the end now. So we're going to be talking about patience. And then we're going to be talking about striking the enemy or pouncing on the enemy, right? So first, patience, right? You got to have patience because the enemy is not going to make mistakes very often if they're a very good Zerg, okay? But what I'm talking about is don't force the enemy, okay? If the enemy shows no weaknesses, if they show no mistakes, then just wait. It's okay to wait. So many callers, especially inexperienced callers, what they'll do is that they'll go, and because the enemy isn't doing anything, the inexperienced caller feels like they have to do something to like get the ball rolling, right? Now, don't get me wrong. If the enemy's inside a castle and you're sieging the castle and the enemy is not doing anything, then yeah, that's because they can just chill, because it's not on them to make the move, it's on you, right? Or if they're sitting inside the territory and you got to take the territory and the timer's coming up in 3 minutes, then yeah, you got to make the move, right? But if it's like a regular fight, open world or whatever, something like that, there's no immediate necessity, right? The castle's gonna pop, the territory's gonna pop, that kind of stuff, right? You got to defend a hideout, whatever. If there's no immediate necessity, then relax. It's okay. It's okay to relax. Just wait. If the enemy is not showing weaknesses, just wait. Wait until they show a weakness. Wait until they make a mistake. All right? And then when the enemy does engage you, all right, it does not mean automatically that it's time to hit them back. And I've said this in multiple episodes before, because this is so important. Just because the enemy hit you doesn't mean it's time for you to hit them back. All right? If the enemy hits you and your Zerg is not ready to hit back because they're low on HP, they're kind of too spread out, they're not doing well, right? Or if your Zerg is just, I don't know, nobody took damage, nothing, right? And you're totally fine. Okay, well, you don't necessarily have to hit the enemy, because what if you hit the enemy and you overexpose yourself, right? Like if you're in a territory and you're holding the territory and the enemy engages you and you take no damage, like you just absolutely just totally fine. Don't counter engage. Just let them fucking be. Let them be. Just relax. Why? Because guess what? Nothing's changed. They engaged you. Yes, you can engage on them. But what if you engage on them and in that process, they hit you with fucking bomb squads and kill you because you went for a counter engage, right? Don't give them anything. Don't make mistakes. They engaged you. They didn't get shit. Okay, whatever. You're the one with the defensive position. You're the one in the castle. You're the one in the territory, right? You're the one holding the high ground, the choke, whatever it might be, right? So relax. Be patient, all right? Now, when the enemy is making mistakes, don't go and interrupt them, all right? Do not interrupt the enemy as they are making mistakes. What I mean by that is, if the enemy's making mistakes, don't go and fix their fucking issues, right? If they're going and they're backing up and they're backing up and they're backing up and they're backing themselves into a choke, all right? They're making a mistake. They're going to back themselves into a choke. Then you can just delete them on the choke, right? Don't fix their mistake by engaging on them. And you can say, wait, how is me engaging on them going to fix the mistake? Well, it's very easy. If they're backing themselves up into a choke and then you engage, guess what? They're going to counter engage you. And if they counter engage you, that's going to be an opportunity for them to change direction. And instead of walking north, they're going to walk fucking west. And they're no longer going to walk themselves into that choke. Right? All because you gave them an opening by engaging them. Now, you may have killed 1 or 2 people. Congratulations. It doesn't fucking matter. Because you could have ended the entire fight. So don't interrupt your enemy when they're making mistakes. At the same time, you have to keep your greed in check, right? It's all about patience. Relax. It's okay, right? Keep your greed in check. What I mean by that is, don't make highlight reels. And I keep talking about highlight reels, man. They're bad, right? They're not good. Instead, try to get 2 to 3 kills at a time. And you'll win eventually, I promise you, right? The enemy's going to run out of sets, or they're just going to give up. They're going to rage quit, whatever the fuck. But if every time you hit the enemy, you kill 1, 2, 3 people, and then every time they hit you, they kill nobody, you're going to win. It's just going to take a while, but you're going to win. And that's fine. Now, when you go and get crazy, you start getting greedy, and you're like, no, I don't want to kill 2 people right now. I want to kill 10. I want to kill 15. So instead of hitting their front line, I'm going to hit their back line. Yes. I want those highlight reels, right? Well, when you go into their back line, guess what you did? You just exposed your own back line, right? And if the enemy hits your back line, then your entire back line might die. And if your entire back line dies, then guess what? Now you just lost the fight. All because you were greedy. That's all it is. You were greedy, right? Now, another thing about patience is that surviving is key, right? Staying alive is more important than doing a desperate engage. Don't just throw yourself at the enemy and be like, I'm gonna fucking do all this damage, or I'm gonna stop them right now. Like, you're kiting back and you're like, I'm gonna completely sacrifice myself for my Zerg right now, even though I totally don't need to. Okay, well, surviving is more important. If your Zerg is gonna be fine, then there's no reason to sacrifice yourself, right? Now, sometimes you do need to, especially as disengaged tank, sometimes you do need to, right? That's okay, that's totally fine. But you need to understand when it's okay to do that, when it's necessary and when it's not necessary. All right. So now, after we've been, patient, and we've kind of relaxed, we've toned down, we've looked at the fight, right? We're understanding what's going on, and now the enemy starts making mistakes. Okay, great. So if the enemy starts making mistakes, well, that means it's time for us to pounce, right? It's time for us to sting like a bee, right? We gotta hit him fast, hit him hard, and keep on hitting him, right? So when the enemy makes a mistake, you have to pay him. You have to make him pay instantly, right? You have to punish his mistakes quickly, because these windows of opportunity don't last long. And I do mean, like, you wait 1 second and it's a little too late, right? Everything has to be quick, right? So sting like a bee, go quick, go fast, and hit hard, right? Catch them off guard. All right, if you hit them and they're trying to stabilize or whatever, and you see that they're all kind of a little bit low on HP, they're not all 100% HP. You see that their players are all walking around in different directions. They're scattering. They're kind of spreading out, right? That means they're trying to stabilize. Don't let them stabilize, right? Snare charge them. Clump them. Even if there's no call to clump them, just clump them anyway. It adds to the pressure, right? Keep the pressure up, because when they feel more pressure, they'll make more mistakes, right? If they're low on HP and then you clump them, even if you don't hit them with your engage, just the fact that you clump them, it's gonna make them get more scared, and they're gonna make more mistakes, right? And if you try to punish an enemy on a mistake and it doesn't work out, right? Let's say the enemy exposed their back line and you hit their back line, but they just had great defensives and they survived it. Okay, then that's okay. Back up, go back to being patient, right? Slow it down again. All right, it didn't work. Okay, that's fine. If at first you don't succeed, then keep trying, right? Wait for their next mistake and then do it again. But when their next mistake hits, you gotta be ready. You gotta be fast, right? You gotta hit them hard, you gotta hit them fast. But you cannot hit them hard and you cannot hit them fast if you are not paying attention the entire time. This is why the timing thing that I was talking about, lack of timing, right? That's a mistake, right? That's why I was talking about that. Because you gotta be able to punish the enemy on their mistakes quick. Now, when the enemy is being very patient, and when the enemy shows no weaknesses and they're not making mistakes, they're chilling, they're holding a good fortified position, right? They got a choke or something, their flanks are covered, all right? In that moment, there's something you can do. What you can do is throw a curveball, right? And if you don't know what a curveball is, in baseball, right? In baseball, there's a certain type of throw with the ball that they'll throw the ball and the ball will curve, and so it looks like it's gonna go one way, and then that last second it turns and goes a different direction, right? So a curveball, it kind of messes with the person because they don't know where the ball will go. So what you're going to do with a curveball is that you're going to do unusual things, right? Do things that are not common. Okay? What I mean by that is, well, send your solo clappers in and tell them to just clap their front line and come right back, right? Tell your bomb squad to just go inside of your Zerg and just clap at their very front line from inside your Zerg, right? Because bomb squads usually hit from the sides, right? From the flanks. Right? Or have your bomb squad come in from the flank. Just make random things start happening. Things that it makes the enemy think what to do about this. Okay? Obviously, try to keep the risk low, but you know, there's some risk to this, no matter what, right? And another thing that you can do is try to dislodge them from their position. If you can, make them move. Make them start moving. And I don't mean make them move completely from where they're standing. I mean just make them move. So start engaging their front line. Just hit their front line and come back. Just hit the front line and come back. And every 30 seconds, when your E is up, you do it again and again and again and again. And then after 4, 5, 6 engages, you just stop. Just don't hit them. And then start hitting again and then stop. Right? Make your engages so random that they don't make any fucking sense, because that'll confuse the enemy. And they will not be able to tell the timing of your cooldown. Another thing you can do is, say you have 4 parties. You have 80 people in your Zerg. You have 4 parties. You tell first party, go in. 3, 2, 1. Come back. Second party, go in. 3, 2, 1. Come back. Third party, go in. Right? And you just keep going. And you literally just keep going. And the enemy's gonna be like, what the fuck is going on? Right? When do I drop my Locust? When do I drop my Enigmatic? When do I drop my Judicator armor, my Demon armor? When do I drop these things? Right? So next thing you know, the individual enemy players are going to start dropping defensives one by one by one by one. And then what you got to do is you're going to reset your entire Zerg. And then when your entire Zerg has cooldowns at the same time, you hit them right away. Why? Because then the enemy is going to have staggered defensives and you're going to have full cooldowns on your E's. Full damage ready. Right? So their mistake is that they staggered their defensives. Right? And so you're gonna punish that mistake. So again, patience is very important, right? But also applying pressure to the enemy to make sure they start making mistakes is gonna open them up. And when they do open up, you gotta hit fast, you gotta hit hard. All right? Now the last thing we're gonna go over here real quick, it won't take long, we're almost done, is ego check the enemy. All right? We have now ego checked ourselves. We've understood why we win. We understand why we lose. And we understand that it's very, very little to do with individual players doing individual plays. It has to do with the synergy of the Zerg against the enemy's mistakes. Right? So now let's ego check the enemy. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, you can say, well, you know what? It's very hard to find the mistakes on an enemy that is so good. They're just the best Zerg in the game. They're the best ever. Oh my gosh, they're so incredible. They do not make mistakes. Well, that's a lie. This is the ego check to the enemy. All right? The enemy is not undefeated, because no one in the entire game is undefeated. And even the best make mistakes, and they make a lot of mistakes. The difference is that they know how to cover their mistakes, but they can't cover all the mistakes. You understand? So even the top Zergs make mistakes, I promise you. And a lot of times it makes people scared, because they're like, oh my god, I'm gonna fight against this guild, right? I'm gonna fight against this guild who is very strong. Okay, so what? It doesn't matter. Make them make mistakes, because they do make mistakes. In fact, you being scared of their name tag is a mistake. You're already losing before you even dismount, simply because you're scared of their name tag. They're people just like you. All right? Now, one thing that good enemies, right, good Zergs, one thing that they'll try to do is that they're going to try to speed up the fight. All right? And Escalation is very notorious for this. All right? They try to speed up the fight in the sense that they try to engage and move and spread and do different kinds of movements, right? They try to speed up the fight by having their 2 cooldowns, right? They'll have a first party engage and the full party engage, right? Or the full Zerg engage, right? So they try to speed up the fight. Why? Because better players are able to deal with faster ZvZ conditions than worse players, okay? So better players do well when the speed of the fight is high. So what you need to do, if you are not as good the Zerg, let's say you're fighting against a better Zerg than you, okay? If you're fighting a better Zerg than you, then what you want to try to do is slow it down. Keep the Zerg nice and slow. If your Zerg it has a lot of players who are not very high level or high quality, then you need to try to slow it down to make sure that your lower quality players can keep up with the fight. So how do you do this? Try to hold chokes. Don't make a lot of engage calls all the time. Don't make a lot of movement changes, okay? If the enemy's doing a lot, that's fine. Just try to slow them down, right? Try to stop them with your tanks as much as possible. Buy yourself time, all right? Don't give any advantages to the enemy, right? Go on top of a hill. Don't let them go on top of the hill, right? Make them fight on low ground. Take defensive position on a castle or a territory. Or on a river choke, right? Water crossings, wood bridges, those kinds of things, right? Try to take a fight closer to your regears than theirs. If they have 3 zones for regear and you only have 1, then that's an advantage for you, right? Fight on your terms. Make the enemy get stretched out. That's how you can ego check the enemy, because if everything is up to their advantage and they think they're great, but they think they're great because every single time they fight when things are good for them, and they never take fights when things are not good for them, then suddenly you change the terms of the fight and they're going to get completely swarmed. Because they're not going to be able to know how they should fight when needing to fight defensively, right? Now, another thing is, if you decide that the fight is no longer in your favor, like let's say you're dismounting, you're fighting, whatever, you take some losses and you're like, you know what? I don't think we're going to win. The moment you think that, mount the fuck up and leave. Go home. It's okay. It's okay. Everybody tries to act like, no, you have to stay there until the end. It's like, no, you don't. That's bullshit. Why give them free sets? Right? Leave. If you want to keep fighting, leave and regroup. And when you're regrouped, then go and dismount and start a fight again. But if you start a fight and you instantly take 5 losses, you lost 5 people in your Zerg instantly, walk the fuck away. Wait till they regear and then dismount again, right? Feel free to leave. Now, just because a Zerg has highlight reels and they have top of the line players, it doesn't mean that every single one of the players in their guild is great. You gotta understand that those players are also learning. It may not seem like it, but they are. Right? Like Pora this season, right? Pora had a lot of really, really good players. But they also had a lot of shitty players. They did. That's the truth. Right? So there's no way that every single one of those players was amazing. There's no way. Right? Now, they had a lot of good players. That's true. But every single Zerg has bad players. And so if you're able to exploit their bad players and make their good players have to cover constantly the mistakes of their bad players, then their good players are not going to be able to have the time to deal anything to you, deal damage to you, or push you back, knock you back, that kind of stuff, right? Because they're too busy helping their lower quality players, right? So with that, you got to find their weakness, find the enemy's weakness, and every enemy has a weakness, every single one of them. Okay, even the best of the best. I promise you, they all have weaknesses, right? I'll tell you guys right now. One of the weaknesses of Del Negro is that he cannot deal very well with multiple flanks from multiple angles, right? That's just the truth. Okay. Now the thing is, Escalation Zerg has amazing D-tanks and amazing supports, so they're able to cover that very well, right? But if you hear the ZvZs and the calls from him, when he gets flanked from multiple directions, he starts to kind of make a lot of mistakes. Let me just put it that way. He makes a lot of mistakes, right? And it's not a knock on him. I mean, you can't be perfect in everything, right? And the only reason I'm talking about him is because Escalation's the best Zerg in the game right now. It's just that simple, right? Escalation's the best Zerg in the game right now. And so obviously we got to look at the best of the best. So when I say every single Zerg has a weakness, I mean it. Every single Zerg has a weakness. Now, I don't know every single Zerg's weakness. I don't. I know the Zerg's weakness that I look at, like, you know, some of the top guilds in the game. I look at them and I understand what their weaknesses and strengths are, right? But I can't tell you every single guild and every single caller and every single thing. I can't, you know. You got to understand that yourself. Your enemy is going to be different than my enemies, right? Unless you're in my guild, right? So that's why you got to understand it yourself. So once you identify the enemy's weakness, right? You have ego check them, right? They're not perfect. The fact that you know they're not perfect, that right there is an ego check on the enemy. And that ego check is going to be critical. Why? Because if you identify their weakness and then you exploit it over and over and over, they will get frustrated, especially the players that have the most ego. They will get very frustrated because they think they are so good that they should not be getting stopped every time. All right? Like I see bomb squads. I've seen so many bomb squads in the history of the game think that they're so great and they're so amazing. And then next thing you know, it's like we ego check them because we put D-tanks, specific D-tanks on them to make sure we stop them. And they get nothing done the entire ZvZ. Literally absolutely nothing done. And they get so upset they end up quitting guilds and shit. Right? I'm telling you, this shit happened in Raid. Right? If you remember Raid, this was like, what, season 11? 10? 8? I don't even know, man. It's been a while. All right? But yeah, that happened in Raid. People started getting really upset and fed up. Right? So, that's the point. All right? That's all for today. That was ego check, right? We got to ego check ourselves, but we also got to ego check the enemy, right? We are not completely perfect, but the enemy isn't either. And thinking that you're perfect is wrong, but also thinking that the enemy is perfect is also wrong. All right? Now, obviously, some people have less issues and some people make less mistakes than others. That's obvious, right? Some people make more mistakes than others. That's, you know, that's the nature of who's better and who's worse. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to understand that you can learn from everybody, right? Like I said, I had guys, you know, in my new guild that I just joined in Reject Party, I have guys who you know, are messaging me saying, hey, you know, you should, because I wear Judicator armor, right, with a heavy mace. And so, you know, they're telling me like, hey, man, you should wear Duskweaver armor, right? And the truth is that Duskweaver armor is great. It is. It's a great fucking armor, right? So I appreciate the feedback. The thing is just the play style that I put in is different than the play style that they put in, right? And so it doesn't necessarily apply to me, right? But we had the conversation, right, where we're able to listen to it and see maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe I'm wrong. So eventually I'll probably end up trying it out, right? Just for the benefit of, you know, trying it out. But I've done it before and I've tried it. It just doesn't work with the playstyle that I do. But understanding that everybody can question you and understanding that everybody has a say in the things that you do. Why? Because it affects them, right? And if one of your guildmates ever comes to you and says, hey man, you know, you should, instead of running your third queue, you should run the first queue, right? Whatever it might be. All right? They say, instead of running third queue, you should run first queue. They're not saying it because they think you're fucking garbage. They're saying it because they want the Zerg to perform better. And they think that Q1 is better than Q3, right? And you might disagree, and that's fine. You can disagree. But at least pay attention and see if they give you any valid points. Because if they give you any valid points, maybe it makes you kind of look at it and reason and be like, okay, yeah, you're right. You know, I didn't think about it, right? I'll start playing this way now, right? And that's how we learn. That's how we get better. And, you know, that's how we make less mistakes. Okay? So that's it. We're all done. I appreciate you guys. I'll give you guys about a minute for any questions, comments, concerns. You guys can drop them in the chat right now. Like I said, we're back. We're down to one stream a week. All right. So the next stream is going to be a week from today, and that's going to be Bait and Switch. That's episode 26. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Drop them in the chat right now. I'll give you guys a minute. All right, looks like no questions. I appreciate you guys. Let me see. Do I have anything else? No, I don't think so. All right. Thank you guys. Oh, yeah, wait. Fucking drop a subscribe, like, comment, fucking, what is it? Follow, all that fun stuff. All right. You know what to do. If you guys enjoy the content, there it is. And tell your friends about it, man. Tell your friends about it. We're still growing the community, right? Little by little, we're growing it. I appreciate everybody. All right. So well, let's try to get as many people on this as possible so we can all learn from each other and we can continue the conversation. The Discord is in the description below on YouTube. It's on the About section as a link in Twitch. So anyway, all right, I'm gonna close it up. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.